All right, and we're live. What a treat. So my name is Uri Schneider, or Schneider Speech, and it's a big treat to be here with my friend Dominique Kennedy. It's hard to do an intro for some people who are so multifaceted and you admire things that are beyond description, beyond words, because they're something that are hard to put your finger on. But you're going to get a big treat in this conversation talking with Dominique Kennedy. She's a speech language pathologist from Atlanta, Georgia. She's an author, she's a mom, she's a wife, she does it all. And she inspires me. I've been energized by seeing her creativity and what she's been able to put out. And we met with a little bit of good chutzpah and an initiative. I saw Dominique putting out some great stuff, and I said, "Wow, this is great stuff. How do I not know this person? I gotta get to know this person." And I just want to encourage everybody that when you see something that interests you, go for it. Reach out, make the connection. Especially now in COVID and all, it's amazing. The people that otherwise would be busy driving to and from or flying here or there are suddenly kind of sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring. So for any of you that are interested in having meetings or connecting with people, I highly encourage you to reach out. And I hope you enjoy this conversation with Dominique Kennedy. She's put out through COVID-19 several books, one of which is a book on stuttering and others, and they're more in the wings. And it's a pleasure and a privilege to invite Dominique to a conversation.
Thank you so much, Uri. I appreciate that. Really just warm, enthusiastic, really humbled by that welcome. I appreciate you so much. And I've been equally inspired by you. I've had the pleasure of joining a number of your therapy groups for adults and teens, very inspired by the way in which you approach speech, not only from just the understanding the therapeutic side of it as a speech language pathologist, but also just understanding the inner workings of the things that are necessary when connecting with an individual that is either working on or overcoming or actively addressing different areas. So I appreciate the opportunity to connect with your adults and teens through that particular offering, as well as I've had the pleasure of participating in a course of yours, still just get it done from home and the safety of your home, the pleasure of your home, the comfort of your home. Your intensive courses have been really very impactful. So I'm looking forward to others being able to connect with the offerings that you are providing through Schneider Speech.
Amazing. Well, it's a big treat and takes one to know one. So I would say, Dominique, you get sincere credit. The course you mentioned, Transcending Stuttering, the online course, you can access it at schneiderspeech.com. But besides the promotional piece, and I hope the rest of our conversation can do this to shed light on the personal journey, that was something I've been sitting on and cooking for 4 years. And I was really stuck hitting the publish button because there were certain things that I didn't feel met my standards, and I was really stuck. And at the time I reached out to you, it was out of good admiration and a healthy envy of here's someone just pumping it out and getting over all those obstacles and hurdles. And so I just want to thank you because you get a lot of credit for the fact that as good as it is still imperfect, it's still a work in progress. The nice thing is it's not a book, so I didn't publish it in a print format, which is not changeable. I can keep adding and modifying, but it is something I'm very proud of. But I wouldn't have put it out there if not for seeing how you've put things out there and the encouragement you gave me before I hit the publish button. So thanks to you for that. And without further ado, let's just jump right in. I mean, one of my, we talked about our taste in music. I know your husband is a musician. You can see in the back left over there, one of musical pieces in the home. People's Zoom says a lot about them. Like you could tell that I like things to be tight and nice, by making a vertical background, you can't see anything. So there's a certain bit of concealment here, but you're showing a bit in your Zoom background, which is awesome. So there's some music that I listen to and I shared with you, Bella Fleck, Yo-Yo Ma, These are
Mhm.
the things I'm listening to when I'm creating. Um, there's one guy, his name is Nissim Black. He grew up in Seattle. He's a black guy. He's a rapper. And then he converted and became Jewish.
Hmm.
And he's a Hasidic Jew who grew up a rapper in Seattle. And in the opening line of his latest piece, he says, "I'm black and I'm Yiddish. And when I Zoom with you, I always get that vibe." So
Oh,
I
really?
think, yeah. So one of the things we talk about is like the cultural piece. I think it's very interesting. I would love to hear your reflections, you know, you being black and I'll be Yiddish, Jewish. Um, you know, we both have a certain um, alignment, and we're part of a tribe within the greater professional community, within the greater community of citizens of the United States. What are your thoughts or anything constructive that you would hope for looking forward as we've gone through some really turbulent times that have brought out a lot of pain, a lot of scars, a lot of wounds? What are some things you're looking for, you're hoping for, you're wishing for, and you think people could really take forward for a better
Wow.
world?
That's a really great question. I appreciate, all the different things that you did touch upon, even in just presenting the question. One of the things I think is really an opportunity for us all is to take these opportunities to be very reflective. Just as we're having conversation today on as many topics as we can during this live time, I think it's important to really have those conversations at the dinner table, have those conversations within your home. Some of the things that you may be less apprehensive to propose or less apprehensive to bring up. I think it's a very critical time, but also very sensitive time to really, confront, not in an even aggressive way, but confront in a way that allows for conversation to be had, whether it's just you initiating the conversation for the first time or continuing that conversation within your family, within your social group or your network. I think, things that are happening, there's an opportunity for us to each have a voice in some way. So whether you choose to make that a public platform or whether you choose to, use a more internal opportunity in your home and your community, there's certainly, a wide range of ways in which to do that. So my hope is that this time, this very sensitive time, this very unprecedented time allows for conversations to be had. That's really my hope.
Beautiful. Just a shout out to good friend Kimberly, who I know is watching and already gave us a like. And if you have comments, you can drop them below. We'll try to keep an eye on that. Are there any things, Dominique, that you would recommend or you found impactful for people to process, digest, read, see, watch? Any recommendations?
There's so many things I try to keep my hands on. Just in general, I'm like life. I consider myself a life learner. I don't think learning stops after you get out of school. Certainly in our profession, we have to stay on our toes so that we can be ready for whatever comes our way, whatever needs a particular client or family we have. So I definitely try to keep a good circulation of material at my fingertips, and I tend to read several things at a time. I would definitely say there's a number of different resources available now, especially around the topics, that are happening at this time or being spoken about the most. I'll be more than happy to drop in the comments several of those. I don't want to mess up anyone's name. You know how I am about names. And so I want to definitely provide those resources. But I will say, even for the most recent book that I put out, one of the opportunities I thought was really, great opportunity was to open the conversation about culture. So while it's a coloring book, I believe that starting very early and from our littlest learners to our, learners that are budding and growing and, going right into the workforce even, or into higher or upper education, I think it's important to begin those conversations, continue those conversations, and start as early as possible. So any resource that you can come across that really opens the door for that, whether it be you discussing, things in your own family. Maybe there's stories that you haven't brought up yet, or maybe there's information that hasn't been discussed. I certainly enjoy speaking with my parents about this family story that, you thought you talked about or you thought you knew, and then it comes up in conversation casually or comes up at a gathering. Well, when we were doing more gatherings formally, but just I could drop some different materials there, but I certainly would say start within your family as to sharing those stories, exchanging resources that way, and really looking to see what's really getting those top ratings, especially from those who are putting out information that is very specific to the culture and the times.
We'll close this little conversation about that with, I'll just say that I did enjoy checking in with you as things kind of flared up, and I appreciate your guidance and connection. And it was nice that we had connected prior to that and kind of had the foundation of that, virtual relationship, and that we could also connect and touch base during that time. And through our conversations and things that were shared with me, I did put together on our blog page a couple of resources. So if anyone wants to go to schneiderspeech.com/our blog, you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a 3-part blog series that we did on, the different tension that was going on in the US, but more importantly, bringing attention and energy to really understanding the different stories and different experiences of different peoples, and finding ways to become more understanding. And through understanding, the doors open up kind of on their own instead of being told what to do. When you understand what you're dealing with and what the other person's dealing with, things just inherently open up. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that this conversation I can share with some of my friends who don't have the privilege to know you yet, but through this have a little bit of a inside scoop. Great. So another thing that strikes me at hitting on what we talked about as a creative, as a go-getter, as an entrepreneurial woman, and also a mom and a wife, and you have your own life. Can you talk about, I'm fascinated because you shared with me, you weren't always the person that would grab the mic. You didn't grow up as someone that loved the spotlight and would be doing a Facebook Live like this. So can you share a little bit about where you came from if we met you 10 years ago, and like what are some of the things you're doing today that your younger self would never have imagined? And then maybe we could share like what were some of the ingredients, because I think there are a lot of people that are just waiting to break out, just waiting to let that fire burn brighter. But there's a lot of reasons we hold back and we inhibit, and I think that you're a living story to share. So if you could share on that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Thank you for presenting that in the way that you have. So you're right. My younger self would not be sitting here with you doing a Facebook Live. I am so grateful for the support of my family. I'm so grateful for just having individuals that I could glean from that were, really using their voice, not to gain attention, but to be impactful in whatever sector they were choosing to do that in. So I've had a lot of great examples of that and a lot of great encouragement. I would say that I've always been a person that enjoyed sharing, exchanging, imparting. That was never anything that was a problem, but the difference was when it came to doing that publicly and openly. There was this apprehension, being a person who is pretty meticulous and pretty analytical, and I would say even critical of myself in that particular area. It presented as a barrier for many years. And I've even shared, like even through college, when I had to do presentations and different things, writing a report or getting that part done was not an issue, but when I had to share openly, again, that was the challenge and difficulty there. So I would say the first thing I really needed to do was to acknowledge what I was feeling concerning that particular area, acknowledging that it was a real experience for me. However it presented to my audience was another story, but for me personally and internally, it was a very difficult thing to overcome, a very difficult challenge to move past. So acknowledgement first, and then, just doing some internal work, really looking at, not from a prideful standpoint, but just really looking at some of the things that I could, highlight personally or could celebrate just myself. You have to give yourself credit in different ways. And I don't think these individuals often give ourselves enough credit for the things that we are working toward, are overcoming. So that was something I had to just acknowledge and just be confident in my personal offerings, be confident in my own skin, just be willing to share. Because, when you're sharing, it is a level of vulnerability that occurs and needs to happen. So when I was better able to come to terms with the level of vulnerability that was required in sharing, that's when I was better able to open myself up to the opportunities to share. So it took some time, and even I would say when I wrote the first book, Stuttering is What You Think, I was very much ready to share more openly. I'd done some different, speaking engagements and webinars, and volunteered in many different ways where it gave me a platform to do so. But even in approaching the sharing, we think about our field, and I think about, we come from a field of people who do, very deep thinkers and, very extensive researchers. So I wanted to make sure that whatever I did publish was something that was not only personal to me, but something worthy of sharing, but also something I did think a lot about, how would the field of speech language pathology receive this work? I wanted to honor the work that had been done up to this point by other individuals that have, produced different things. So not from a comparison standpoint, just a way to just make sure you're putting information out that is authentic and real and beneficial. So that in itself was a journey, but I'm so glad I did. I'm so thankful for the opportunities that have opened up, the doors that have opened up in order to just provide resources. That is my, my goal and my hope to, encourage a hope and a help mindset for individuals, and also just provide really strong resources there.
Wow. So I want to touch on two things from what you said. One is like maybe just to share with people that might be waiting to publish that book that's sitting in their desktop or whatever. And then, what are some of those things that were helpful to you or that are out there for people to think about to be kind of resourceful and open-minded? And then I'd love to talk about what were some of the surprising responses that you got with all the caution that you had ahead of time. What were some of the surprising outcomes? So from the transformational journey that you went through of breaking out and kind of putting yourself out there and sharing, I'm thinking there are accountability groups, there are Facebook groups that kind of encourage one another or serve as a informational social network. There's obviously getting a private life coach or a therapist or working through things that might be useful to you in certain ways, but holding you back in other ways. I call them, like my ADD is my superpower, but it's also my kryptonite. And figuring out how to use it to my advantage. For another person, their perfectionism can be a great thing. Their competitive nature, their high standards, all of these can be both a superpower and a kryptonite. And sometimes working with an individual professional coach or therapist can be helpful. Sometimes being part of a support group of people that are doing something similar or dealing with similar challenges. Sometimes teaming up with a partner who complements your strengths and weaknesses and kind of is a good partner in that way, whether it's a spouse or a friend or a professional. What were the ingredients that you feel really were transformative for you?
Good question. So I'll start with the first one. So definitely having a spouse that's been and has always been very supportive of my
hip for the spouses.
That's right. I have to give credit there because it's not a one-man show when it comes to doing anything, especially when you're married. So while while one person is maybe the producer of a certain thing, certainly there needs to be support on the home front as to getting all the different moving parts to work together beautifully. So thankful for my husband, that particular area. Again, I'm thankful for just being I try to position myself, I try to do this, just always having a circle of people around me that I feel not only pour into me, but ones that I can glean from, those that will be honest with me about things, but still encouraging. There's a way to be constructive. Sometimes we have this idea about constructive criticism or tough love. I definitely don't want yes people in my group. I definitely want individuals who are honest and willing to, check me if need be, but also be encouraging in that area. So that has definitely been a great help. I would also say getting over, you mentioned perfectionism. So really putting aside the things that would prevent me from actually producing the work. So I'm a person that I can find many different ways to look at a particular thing, or I can come at it from many different angles. And certainly when you're developing a work, you can have work that is longitudinal. It can go on for many years if you allow it to. I decided that there had to be a point where I would stop, where I would be satisfied in the work that was produced and acknowledge, like, hey, there's opportunities to do series or volumes or, republication. So whether there was more to be had or more to be discussed, there's opportunity. Like, there's not a limit. Once you put it out there, yes, it's out there, but there's still opportunity to, reshape or add to what you're doing. So once I uh, connected with that and when I was secure in that, I was fine with putting the work out. And then to speak to the surprising responses, I was really, and I'm still forever thankful to the community of individuals who stutter, who were very welcoming. It kind of like was this, who are you? This kind of new person on the scene, so to speak. It could look like that. And people can be very either territorial or very protective of groups because it's for some, very sensitive area. So to know that someone was genuine in what they were trying to offer and genuine in building relationships, I really appreciate those who received that graciously. So thank you to those individuals. And then I was really pleasantly surprised by those individuals who supported the project or projects, particularly the first project, who don't stutter or don't know who stutters, don't have a family history, but they were willing to and open to getting more information so that they would be prepared, or they would, be have more insight, or they would be better able to help facilitate or contribute to that conversation. So that was really inspiring and somewhat delightfully surprising.
Yeah. Shout out to, one second, why am I hearing echo? Shout out to my good friend Kristen Camella, who was busy running a camp shout out. So it seems appropriate to give her a shout out.
Yeah.
Also our good friend Camp Say and others around the country, virtual camps for young people who stutter. Kristen, the best workshop I attended of hers, and there were a bunch, was the heuristics, the study of problem solving. Mm. And I think when we're at the front end of putting something out there, like you talked about, it's very similar to what some of our clients are dealing with in terms of the fear and the anticipation of, that's a big cup of coffee.
It's water, but usually I have tea.
I'm with you on the protein shake. So the fear of what's going to be, like we all have these horrific stories. We horrify. What's going to happen if we take that risk? What's going to happen if we hit the click? What's going to happen if we hit publish? Mm-hmm. And I think for our clients, unpacking what those stories are, like what would happen? What's the risk? What's the exposure? And then what would be the benefits? And then in a safe way, exploring what happens if we start venturing outside our comfort zone. Would you agree that like the first book you published was like a watershed moment for you? Like that first breakthrough suddenly opened up in a way categorically different than, let's say, the second book going into the third book, because you're really pumping them out there. Would you say that that's fair, that like there's this initial stepping out of the comfort zone and then there's a certain amount of momentum that gives you, or it's the same resistance every time you try to stretch the the boundaries and push a little further out.
You know, I love the way you used the descriptive language that you used when setting up the question. I do believe that it was like a watershed. Like once I put it out there, I felt like, okay, I did it, it's done. And you kind of have to just accept, you have to really stay connected to your why. You know, if you're only, you know, going off of flattery or only going off of likes or only going off of followers, you know, you can be very easily disappointed. But if you stay connected to your why, I think that is, at least for me as a goal-oriented person, that's fuel enough to continue.
What's your why?
You know, to be honest with you, I
Only,
am.
only honest. I love when people say that, to be honest. I'm like, what else is there?
You're right. You're right. You're right. Not giving you like the representative, but you know,
If
it's
you want to, by the way, if you want to not be honest, that's okay.
well,
But
no,
not here, not now, not with
I'm
me.
definitely honest. I was once in a place where I probably didn't have much of a filter, but I do have a filter, but I'm still honest.
That's
So to answer the question, my why is not only putting out resources that are beneficial and contribute not only to just the publication market, but our field. Like everything I do is in some way going to, at least it has been connected in some way to the speech language pathology area or field. So I want to, and I always keep in mind the clients that I encounter, the families that I come across, those individuals that I'm privileged to work with, because they don't have to choose our offices. They can go anywhere they want to go. So I try to make sure in thinking about those pain points and those areas that come up often, I keep them in mind as part of my why, knowing that, you know, once they leave the office or once they leave our session, there's still life after that. There's still, you know, areas to overcome. There's still things to address. So beyond our sacred space within our session, what tools am I empowering them with? What tools am I giving people to continue the work that needs to be done? And then certainly I have children. So, you know, it's important for me to be a demonstration of the things that we discuss, you know, the things that we encourage them to do and connecting with their purpose. I believe that children know very early. I think we get away from it as adults somewhere along the way. But I think as children, they very much and very easily even connect with their purpose. So making certain that we encourage those gifts that we see in our children and helping them to see like, hey, mom, you know, is nurturing her gifts. Mom is nurturing the things that she feels strongly about. And I want to be an example of that for them, not just talk the talk, but I want them to see it, you know. And then people think about legacy. I think it's important to consider that piece, leaving something for your children or having some kind of, you know, offering for them, whether it be financial, whether it be, you know, just the words of wisdom and gems that you leave for your kids. So I keep those things in mind as part of my life.
what would you hope your kids would say about their mom?
I would hope they would say that they, well, we have a saying, we say, I always say, I love you for always and forever, no matter what. So I hope they always connect to that. I hope that they
What does that mean? What does that mean?
I try to make sure they understand that we are very much connecting to who they are as people, no matter what they do, no matter what they say, no matter what is, and there's nothing that you could do or say that would turn my love button off, you know, there's nothing. So I would want them to always know that forever and always, no matter what, you know, that love is, you know, eternal, forever, you know, can't change. So, you know, because I feel like when you think about, when you have this standard, because I feel like I have decent standards for myself and, you know, for my family. And I would want them to know that even though we have a certain level of standards, that they can always understand that it's okay to show up in the space authentically, that it's okay to learn from mistakes. It's okay to acknowledge that, hey, we just had a teachable moment there, and be okay to do that. You know, have a sacred space to do that, have a space where you can feel supported and growing through that. And my kids will say, we have this other thing where it's like, I'm working on that. Like, it's okay to say, hey, I'm still working on that. So I want them to know that I'm okay with, at whatever stage we are as a family or individually, that it's okay to say, hey, I'm still working on that.
Beautiful. It made me think, it's such a powerful thing, but basically, I think the great therapists and the great givers and the great helpers out there are people who have that ingredient of authenticity, and I think what you said about love you always and forever, it sends a message of being much more than doing, like be you. I
Mm-hmm.
love you. I don't love when you behave nicely. I don't love when you give me that birthday card. I like it. I
Right.
love you for being. You're just breathing. I love you, and that unconditional regard. And I think when it comes to being professionals, and this is what I admired so much in our first conversation when I had no idea who you were, it just shines like it does right now. The authenticity of your spirit, the values that you espouse as a private person in your personal life. You bring that into the professional work. You breathe that and weave that into your books. Certainly, I strive to do that as well, and I think that is one of those X factors that's hard to measure and it's hard to teach the next generation of professionals in our field. But it's so important, and I think in many ways, just to give a shout out, not to camp shout out this time, but to my dad, Dr. Phil Schneider. I think what his contribution to the field, and I hope others will comment and correct me or amplify this. I think people have suggested and added different approaches or validated, certain data in the research. I think my dad's contribution is bringing back the humanity,
Yes.
bringing back the human spirit, both as the professional, when you play the professional guide, and then also the person coming into the room. It's not a pair of lips, it's not a diagnosis, it's a person, it's a child, or it's a parent, a spouse, it's a sister, it's a brother, it's a living, breathing person. My father always would say, a pair of vocal folds don't walk into the office. A pair of lips don't walk into the office. A person, they have a name, you treat them as a person. And likewise, you come in as a person and you bring your humanity into the room. And I think you have that, Dominique. And I would just emphasize for anyone listening, if you're looking for a professional or you are a professional, I think that it's important to be in touch with that, to look for that humanity, because that's where the great helpers, I think, identify themselves, are the people that bring that spirit. So being more than doing and bringing the humanity in. If you want to see more of my father, I'll give you a secret. On the website, there's, of course, the free movie, the documentary film that we produced in 2004, Transcending Stuttering. You go to schneiderspeech.com/movies. You can see it there, or you can go to blog page. There's the Transcending Stuttering. People know about that one. Then there's the sequel, Going with the Flow, where you see two people who stutter. One of them is a much more overt, external, quite a strong stutter, Michael, and you see his story, his journey in therapy, and you actually see therapy play out. And then you've got Sarah in the contrast to Michael, who also stutters, but she had a more mild physical experience, but it was like scared to say things that she wanted to say, shameful, embarrassed, adjusting, changing, ducking and dodging. And as a college student, similar to the turnaround that, you've had and others have had later in life, she has a moment where she has a breakthrough and she kind of gets in touch with herself and starts to be more true. She becomes a speech therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the journey. So that's called Going with the Flow. That's the sequel, Going with the Flow, the guide to transcending stuttering. Both of those are free. Now, the one where you really will meet my father is in the third one that most people don't know, which is all the stuff that was left on the cutting room floor. And also shout out to Justin Matley, who helped us as the producer and co-director of all of those films. And in that 40-minute lecture from my dad, you'll see him just shining. So if anyone's interested in learning more, check that out. I've also put your author link in the comments below, and we welcome any questions or comments. We'll talk for a few more minutes, but welcome comments and questions. We've got a couple of good friends that I recognize watching, so excited to share this exciting conversation with Dominique Kennedy, a friend and someone I admire, an author, entrepreneur, mom, wife, and also she's a speech language pathologist. And just talking about everything related to speech and culture and humanity and pushing your own limits. So again, I think the authenticity of being people who are in a growth mindset, being people who are leaning into crucial conversations like the cultural conversations we had, and being people who are creative, who are thinking outside the box. I think that's part of what brings us into the work that we do, don't you think?
I agree. And I wanted to speak to a couple of points, just the humanity piece that you shared for your dad. That was definitely something that stood out to me. The way in which your father, especially in the films, um, is able to not only offer ownership for the individual to gain concept of, but also just a deep level of empathy and humanity, as you said. That's definitely reflected very strongly in the film. So that is something I would greatly encourage, whether you are an individual who stutters or just want to learn more about that particular area, just watching a therapeutic process that unfolds so beautifully. I would really encourage that. And then being able to participate in the groups that you offer for adults and teens, just the way in which you seem like you're very like relational when it comes to just relationship building and offering individuals an opportunity to really not only think deeply about themselves, but also acknowledging where they are on in the journey, but not pushing it. Like, you encourage and you may nudge in a way, but you never put someone in a position where they feel exposed. And I think that's so important, because I've spoken to individuals who have communicated with me like they feel as though, this is not often, because I think we do a wonderful job in our field in general, but for those who may focus so heavily or so aggressively on the techniques rather than addressing the person as a whole person, I think you do a wonderful job of that, and making certain that you allow room for that person to, step up to the plate when they're ready, as they see fit.
That's it. Yeah.
I think that's really important to acknowledge, and definitely something for those speech language pathologists that are coming into the field, and those that are emerging in that way, or maybe you're just reimagining how you're doing therapy. I would strongly encourage you to tap into the resources that are available through your practice, Schneider Speech, just to kind of see and get a firsthand look as to how that's done. I think it's so important to really acknowledge that part.
I just want to say, little parentheses, I could listen to you talk all day long. Your cadence and your articulateness is very calming. It's like for me, like I could go take a hike, or I could just listen to Dominique Kennedy talk. The articulate Southern accent, I just love it. It gives me a chance to smile. How do you like that?
Oh,
So
that's great. Thank you for that plug.
nice little bridge right there. Yeah, that was very nice of you. Some very flattering words, some very, very nice words. I think I would say one of our core values, and I think we both share this, is the idea that one of my mentors who passed away in the past year, Dr. Joel Stark from Queens College, he would often say labels are for cans. Whether it's a processing disorder or LD or LLD or ADHD or whatever variation of alphabet soup, labels are for cans, and they can be helpful for us as professionals as we help parents navigate the system of getting help for their kids. It can be important for qualifying for funding from insurance or from school districts, but in the end of the day, every kid is unique. We both share a special passion for people who stutter, and I think it's important to recognize, while stuttering is an umbrella to identify under, it's a group of people with many different subgroups and subtypes within. And so no two people are the same. Each person's stutter is somewhat unique. It's almost like a signature. And similarly, as you said, what they're ready to do, what they care to do, what they're scared of can be quite different one person to the next. And so if you know someone, or you care for someone, or you're a professional, it behooves you to kind of think about, how do you personalize that? How do you come in touch with that? So I was working with a young man just this morning I've had 3 appointments this morning before our Facebook Live, and he's on to college. And I said to him, listen, we haven't spoken for 2 weeks. How you feeling about this, rising freshman to college? You excited about this meeting and what we could do together? Or are you kind of like, I really don't want to be doing this?
Mhm.
And he said, it's a little bit of both. And I said to him, well, tell me a little bit more about both sides of it. Like what pulls you in and what parts are like, I really don't want to go there. I really don't want to be pushed. I really don't want to have to talk about that. So I think it's important, and it can be a breakthrough for us as individuals and in the work we do to give air to the things that draw us forward, to things that we are impulsively jumping into, and then also what are the inhibitions, what are the fears, and air them out. And sometimes just airing them out opens space, and sometimes it also lets the other person know how to tread more carefully. If it's a professional or if it's a parent, when you hear what the other person's concerns are, like we had a little back and forth chat before this, just to kind of to know what the boundaries were of how we'd each be comfortable as loosely as we would do this, which is totally spontaneous, but just make sure the boundaries are clear. I think if you're a parent of someone with a speech and language challenge, or you are a professional, is so important to check in, right? You can't assume that you know because you know everything about that diagnosis, or to assume you're the expert because you've known 100 people with that diagnosis. But every time checking in, that's probably the most powerful tool we've got, is to really check in and say, hey, what's up? What's bringing you here, and what's holding you back, and how can I make you feel safe? Because when you feel safe, quote another one of our titans in the field, Carol Westby, who I've had privilege to dine with and take out with individual chat. She was the developer of the Westby play skills, and she talks about, you can't learn anything about swimming if you're not ready to splash in the water. So unless you feel safe, you're not ready to learn the breaststroke or the crawl or anything like that. So helping people feel comfortable is so important. And I think that's a bedrock of our chats and relationship, and I think in the work that we do. Yeah. How has that played out for you? What would you say? How do you tackle that and make it a safe space when you're engaging people? Delicate spot.
You've really said a lot there, and I concur with much of what you said. I do think we have the responsibility to create a space that is safe for the individuals that enter our office space or come into a session or therapy opportunity.
Or Zoom.
Right, or Zoom. We're doing it all kinds of ways now, which is great that we have the access in the way that we do. So making certain, I have discussions that I've had with other individuals, and just talking about making sure that, yes, we have intake paperwork and different things. We have individuals complete to, get started and initiate things, but beyond the paperwork, making certain that you've connected as completely as you can to that point with what the individual's expectations are. What are, as you mentioned, their reservations, even getting into some of the cultural considerations. Maybe you have a certain perception of what may be comfortable for a particular individual or group based on how you perceive they identify. So making certain that you allow that individual to share with you directly. Finding a way to do that that is honorable to that person. Making sure that you gather as much information as you can. Ask the right kinds of questions. Sometimes the questions may be uncomfortable for you to ask, but knowing how to approach those things so that you guys both, as a clinician, as a person participating in services, you're both able to start in a place, in a space where you're trust built, or at least a rapport established, so that you can move into the process, not only understanding that it's going to be a process and it's going to be actionable steps to take, but also creating a space where the person feels comfortable with sharing, and that they have an opportunity to share. You want to be open in that way. You can't come in a certain way and think, I'm the expert. Well, I always try to think about, while I may be positioned in the way that I am on this other side of the table, so to speak, there's an exchange opportunity available. I'm always looking to learn from another individual. I actually, enjoy that aspect of it. So being open, just knowing that you're staying teachable, really, knowing that you don't know everything. And I believe that from the littlest learner to, the most seasoned person, I really take time and put great emphasis on making sure I do that. for all ages and all individuals from any background. I think that's important for us to do.
This is awesome. I'm going to ask you one more question. I just
Absolutely.
thought it was a great question to ask you. I can't wait to hear what you're going to say, and then we'll round out with some opportunities and for people to learn more about Dominique and her good work and some things we're doing. But the last question I would ask you, it's common for people to say, like, if you could have 1 hour with anybody, past, present, future, who would it be? But that's boring. We already know that one. I think was more interesting to me, don't worry, is what would you ask? Like, what are you seeking? What are you wondering? What are you curious about in the next, 1 to 5 years? What's that burning question? Because I know there's something.
Wow, that's a really good question. Give me a moment to process what you asked and think about it. So you're not asking for the
I
person
would
you're
invite everybody. Yeah, like if you could sit down with that dream person, whether it's, I don't know who you have on mind, whether it's Oprah, whether it's Martin Luther King, whether it's Abraham Lincoln, whether it's Abraham. Um, you know, interesting who people choose, but I think the other thing is, okay, you get that person for an hour. What are you going to ask them? Like what's that thing? Because I think all of us, and to borrow from Kristen Camella once again, who I have the utmost respect for, she often would say, and I don't think it's hers, but I attribute it to her because I heard it from her, we're all perfectly imperfect. And as strong as we may feel, we're all imperfect. We're all missing. We're all puzzle pieces that complete each other. Not to be cheesy, Jerry Maguire, but shout out to my good colleague and researcher friend in University of California, Irvine, Dr. Gerald Maguire, the original Jerry Maguire. But you complete me. So we're all half of a whole, and we're looking for that other piece, and we find it in our spouses and in company and in our friendships and colleagues and whatnot. But what's that question that you're thinking about professionally or personally?
I would say one question would be to ask, what was the defining moment for that individual that helped them to connect with their purpose and how they decided to move forward with that? I think that purpose question is one that people spend their lifetime pursuing and seeking to find the perfect answer to and live out, so I would definitely want to know, like, if there was or what was that defining moment that helped them to really connect to and ignite that. So what set them on the path toward pursuing and ultimately fulfilling their purpose.
So it's the pursuit of purpose and really knowing with validation, like how do I know I'm doing what I'm here to do? How did you determine that? Whoever that person might be.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a series. I mean, there's never one. Well, I shouldn't say there's never. There are oftentimes many defining moments, many contributing factors as to what helps just solidify or point that person toward that particular area. But I know oftentimes there's like maybe one thing that stands out or one thing that was a catalyst for the many contributing pieces. So that's always very fascinating to me to hear from other individuals and just, knowing when they reflect on different things, how that was shaped for them.
Yeah. Well, I'll take it since I put you on the spot. I'll literally put myself on the spot. I think that on a personal note, I totally resonate with what you said. Like, just to make sure I'm living out my purpose and what would be some lighthouses to indicate that I am. And I've been fortunate to have some of those in my life, in my marriage and in my relationships. But another question that I wonder about professionally would be like, if we could completely reimagine speech therapy, speech language pathology, if we could completely transcend the existing boxes that exist, the existing, constructs and frameworks, if we could just strip away all the plastic and go back to like building from scratch. Like if we could go with the forefathers of our field, or if we could reimagine building it from the ground up, what would that look like? And then how could we successfully, in a realistic way, in a respectful way, in an ethical way, in a professional way, kind of weave that into present day? Because I think COVID-19 is a tremendous stress, tremendous challenge on many people's health, finances, social, emotional, mental well-being. And at the same time, it's a major, major reset for civilization. Like, it's a major pause, hold up, step back. We're not in 2019 anymore. We're not in 2018 anymore. We are in a new era. So as challenging as it is, it's time to rethink how we do things, how we run our homes, how we do our shopping, how we socialize, but also how we work. So I think there's a significant challenge that I'm experiencing, but with that, tremendous opportunity to kind of reconsider what matters and what would I look to create if I could start it all from scratch. So that would be what I would ask, like, what are those universal truths and things? And if we could boil it all down and strip away all the stuff and start from those principles and build from there, accommodating for all the details, that's what I'm chasing. And so I'll give one plug, and then I want to hear from you where people can go to learn more about you. But first of all, I absolutely admire, appreciate, and respect you and the books and work that you've been doing. It is so authentic. It is coming from such an anchored, spirited, true, and very valuable, soul, and that you just pour into everything that you do. So I'm very appreciative of our relationship and this time. So I would love for you to share with people where they can find more about you, and then I'll share, where people can find more of what I'm doing. But can you just tell people where to find more about Dominique Kennedy and the greatness that you're putting out there?
Well, let me first say I thank you so much. It's definitely a mutual experience as it relates to the level of respect and appreciation, and having been able to begin and continue to foster a relationship professionally in the way that we have. I also wanted to just say thank you for inviting me to have this conversation today. I really don't take it lightly that we have these opportunities in this way. So however we choose to take them, whether it be Zoom or live or what have you, I think it's definitely something that is worth having. So I appreciate that. But as far as keeping connected with me, you can certainly go to my website. It's my first and last name, DominiqueKennedy.com. So it's DOMINIQUE, last name
I'll put
Kennedy.
that in the chat as well.
Got it, edy.com. You can also, my publications are all through Amazon. So you can visit my authors page on Amazon.
That's already posted in the links in the comments below.
I appreciate that. So, those are just the best ways to connect with me. And I like having conversations. I like contributing to conversations, whether it be what we're doing today or having opportunities through social media. So I'm always looking to build relationships. So thank you for asking.
I also love your Instagram handle, DOM.KNDY, right?
KND, yep.
KND, because Kennedy. My favorite American poet is E.E. Cummings. I'm like borderline dyslexic, so eliminating the punctuation was like halfway there for me. So I love E.E. Cummings. But when you did the Dom.KND Kennedy, that just took the whole vowel thing out of the picture and double syllable. So I'm all over yeah, that'd be great for me. I'm thinking about how to do that with my name, but there's too many vowels. So you can also check out Dom.KND. That's not KD like Kevin Durant, but KND on Instagram. And you've also got a Facebook group. What's the name of the Facebook group?
It's Stuttering and Speech. Sweet. That's SUIT for sweet.
Yeah, you just came through with some real reverb there. That was pretty cool. Maybe that's your husband's ad coming through. Me, so I'll be Uri Schneider. You can check us out at SchneiderSpeech.com. We got that we are doing. One is we continue to work on Zoom, including my dad. My dad has leaned in completely 100% into Zoom, and in his own journey with Parkinson's, he has rediscovered his love with voice therapy. So in addition to stuttering, whether it's voice therapy, executive functioning, or figuring out how to navigate speech and language issues during these challenging, unusual, different times that we're living through. And of course, working with people who stutter, preschoolers, parents, school-age kids, teens, and adults, working one-on-one. Dominique also mentioned the group therapy. So we've got a weekly group therapy for adults. We've got a weekly group therapy for teens. On the homepage, just scroll down, you'll see a button for group therapy to check that out. And we've also got this exciting online course, the Transcending Stuttering online course. It's a self-help online course, and we're looking for 15, just 15 people who stutter to join a cohort, which I will lead. It'll be a 4-week cohort, which will be independent learning as well as a weekly meetup with the other people in the group for some facilitated question and answer and sharing and growth and accountability and all that good stuff to help you so you're not on your own. So you can check that out on our homepage. And then at the end of the month, August 30th, we'll have another free meetup for parents of kids, for teens, and for adults. Dominique has been a special guest for some of those. And those are just free opportunities for people not to feel isolated, not to feel alone, and not to feel any boundaries or obstacles to accessing a community of professionals, but also a community of peers. And there's a lot of strength and wisdom to be gained from that. So with that, I wish everybody an incredible day. Hope you stay safe, stay healthy, stay well, keep talking, and check out more about Dominique Kennedy. And very soon this will be published on our Facebook Live as well as on our website on schneiderspeech.com/our blog. Dominique, thanks for taking the time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, we got you on mute there, but I think you said.
I was saying thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right. Ta-ta, everybody.